Hi, everyone. So, this is day two of the Well at Work webinar series for Black and Caribbean women in corporate America. I'm Chereese La-Vonne, a public speaking coach who really cares about the people who want to show up as the change that they hope to see in the world, helping them communicate and be with more confidence and clarity in general. Today, we're talking about boundaries at work. Yesterday, we spoke a little bit about emotional regulation. And if you did not see that video yesterday, I would really suggest that you go back and look on my LinkedIn or my YouTube page with this name, Chereese La-Vonne, to go and have a look at that because some of the work and what we talked about yesterday is going to be foundational for what we are talking about today, which is setting boundaries. Now, I want to tell you about a time that I was working as a digital consultant, marketing consultant, creative consultant. I really did have a lot of titles: copywriter, creative lead at a digital marketing agency in Kingston, Jamaica. This was when I was in my 20s. And there was such a horrible culture that I did not realize I was being taken advantage of until retrospect because I was young and excited and I believed in this idea of, oh, we're all a family. And so, we're going to do a whole lot of stuff together. So I would get up. What was interesting was even before remote work was a real thing, our boss was pioneering enough to have remote opportunities. So we would get up and we had to be online on Slack at 7 a.m. And I kid you not, almost every day I would not sign out of Slack until 7 p.m. And I want to let you know that up until today, that Slack ping ding ding is absolutely triggering for me because there was such an expectation of our time because our boss had given us this location freedom. There was such an expectation of our time that really we were getting reprimanded for not responding within 5 minutes or have it being expected to do work up until late at night. And I actually developed a health problem. I'm not going to get into details, but it was a very painful and embarrassing situation that affected my physical health and my ability to relate to others. I'll just put it like that. And when I went to the doctor told me, Cherise, you're too fucking stressed. This is what's causing your health problem. So basically, that was an example of my boundaries being completely obliterated. I didn't know any better because I fell into this, oh, we're such a great family speech as a young 20 something year old, excited to be working in the creative industries and in a creative company that had such impact. I mean, we were getting government contracts. I've worked on marketing campaigns for really important brands in Jamaica. And so it was exciting in a way, but the culture was absolutely predatory. And I did not know any better at that time. Now, if you know what that feels like, if you've had an experience where you felt so overworked, not just felt, been so overworked, where you've had health issues, where it's affected your relationships outside of work, I want you to put the word boundaries in the comments. So I know I'm not alone with this. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name, as seen on the screen, is Chereese La-Vonne. I'm a public speaking coach for change makers. And specifically right now with this Well at Work series, I'm targeting Black and Caribbean women in corporate America who want to leave behind the white man capitalist model of success and ground in a much better way of being that aligns with who you are so that you can not just advance in your career, but you can also advance as yourself, right? We want you to shine at work without losing your shine in your everyday life. That is the goal. Yesterday, I shared my story of how I left behind, as I call it, this white man capitalist model. And today, I want to talk a little bit about boundaries and why it's important. But before I get into that, there are 5 core values that I mentioned yesterday that I want to, again, just mention very quickly today. These are 5 core values that are the foundation of everything that I teach. So if you can agree to these following statements, then we may be a good fit for each other, coach to client. If you can't agree, I'm going to invite you just for the duration of this live video, adopt them temporarily. Think of it like when you go to a dressing room and you're just trying on an outfit. See how it feels. Walk around in it a little bit. And by the end of the session, let me know if you feel like it fits or it could fit, or maybe you would like to buy it, but you know you're going to have it tailored. So we have to work on the tailoring a little bit. Okay. So I'm inviting you to adopt these values, even temporarily, just for this webinar. First one, you are not put on this earth just to work. You are not put on this earth just to work. Okay? Your purpose is how you be. It's number one. Number two, nobody no more than you. I'll say that in English. No one is above you. You have just as much worth as every other human being on this planet. There is no one who is ranked above you. We may, in organizations, organize ourselves in particular roles for the efficient accomplishment of a common goal. Absolutely. But at the core, the essence, you are just as worthy of being considered, of being cared for, of having your needs met as any other person. Number three, true success is impossible if you deny parts of yourself. True success is impossible if you deny parts of yourself. That means we are not leaving our mind or body or spirit or emotions or energy behind when we're seeking success. We're bringing all of that with us. Okay? We're mentally successful, we're emotionally successful, we're physically successful, we're energetically successful, we're spiritually successful, as well as financially and professionally successful. Number four, you're not here for the status quo. You shift shit. You are not here to just be a part of the status quo. You shift shit. And number five, the supernatural is your new normal. The supernatural is your new normal. So today, through the lens of boundaries, we're going to apply these values to how you show up in the workplace so that you can show up fully without burning out, without losing your shine. Quick note before we dive in, I have a few one-on-one coaching spots open for September. The link to book with me is in the description below. That's going to be bit.ly/30 minutes with Chereese, 30 minutes with CHEREESE, bit.ly/30 minutes with Chereese. And just so you know, tomorrow I'm going to be announcing a new coaching package that I've been working on that's designed specifically for Black and Caribbean women to bring you to the C-suite and beyond with your communication and your confidence skills. It's all about building the skills to show up with sweet clarity, sweet connection, sweet conviction, sweet consciousness, and sweet confidence. Those are 5 pillars in this new program that I'm developing for Black and Caribbean women. It's called Sweet Speech, and I'm going to be talking more about it tomorrow. Okay, and tomorrow is going to be September 4th, and we're going to be talking about authenticity at work, how to advance in your career without leaving yourself behind. All right, so let's dive into it. Let's define it. What are boundaries? And why is it important to have boundaries at work? And what does this look like? And how can you practically do it? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what boundaries are, what they're not, how to apply boundaries. And we're also going to look at some very specific scenarios. We're also going to look at some very specific scenarios that are in the workplace that you may encounter and potential ways that you can put forward your boundaries, okay? So boundaries are, in general, the guidelines that protect who you are. A lot of times, actually, I don't want to use the word protect as much as I want to say contain. So boundaries are the guidelines that contain the way that you show up to any specific space, okay? A lot of time we think of boundaries and we think of it like a harsh, you cannot come here, back off. And I don't see it as that as much as it is If you want to come here, here are the things that will make it an optimal experience for both of us. That's the way I like to think about boundaries. So when we're thinking about setting up boundaries, we want to set them up in a way that's able to protect our time and our energy or well-being in such a way that we're still able to contribute effectively to the team. Boundaries are not about being rude, they're not about being selfish, they're not about saying no to everything. What boundaries are is boundaries are being able to say yes with intention. Boundaries are knowing your capacity and being true to that capacity. Because remember, one of the founding principles is that I am not successful if I leave my part of myself behind. So if I know that my capacity energetically is at limit, but I want to push myself to show up as more as this big successful part of the team, but I am leaving behind my energetic capacity, then that's not true success. And also, what boundaries are is boundaries are about protecting your peace so that you can show up best. And I want to say, not just show up best, but show up best with consistency. I would like to get real about something. I think that as women, I think that as Black women, I think as Caribbean women, I think for myself as a queer woman, boundaries can be especially hard for us because we were probably raised in a home where we were not given that opportunity to have boundaries. In some homes, you weren't even allowed to close your bedroom door without it being a hoo ha. In some homes, work ethic was survival. In some of your homes, your families taught you work twice as hard, don't complain, don't rest. If you grew up in a particularly religious home, they may have told you that your feelings or your rest were laziness or weakness. And generationally, because of the history of enslavement and systemic inequity, our worth has often been measured by how much we can endure. And these are things that we may not cognitively recognize, but we don't always get the opportunity simply to be. It's not how well can you be yourself, it's how much can you endure this abuse that is being put on you. And I want to say that quite plainly because I understand that all of our histories are very different. But there is a common denominator, at least within Black and Caribbean communities, where we do not speak out about the ways that we have or are being abused enough. We're starting to speak out more, and I'm grateful for it. But what that can mean is that people who have had their bodies abused, people who have had their mind, their spirits, their emotions abused, may not even have the language to be able to say, you know, say that never right, or you know, say we never deserve that. So, what we're talking about here when it comes to boundaries is something that's really, really revolutionary for you as a Black and Caribbean woman. To be able to say, you know, my being is worthy of something, full stop, regardless of what I can endure. And I refuse to endure things that are not supportive of my well being. That's revolutionary. That's what change makers do. When we step into workplaces with this kind of conditioning, what can happen is that we end up overperforming to kind of show that we belong. We may also mask part of ourselves to seem more professional. I remember for a very long time, and now I understand that in different industries, it's different. Luckily for me, I've mostly worked in creative industries, so I have a little bit more liberty. But when it comes to this idea of masking part of ourselves to seem more professional, I remember for the longest time, I refused to get a tattoo because I always thought if I get a tattoo, I'm not going to get a job. Well, as you can see, I got over that, right? One of the things that I reasoned was, well, I work in the creative industries and I mostly work for myself, meaning I'm entrepreneurial, setting up my own spaces. So I get to define that culture. And those cultures tend to be a little bit more flexible, anyways. I spent 15 years thinking I would like to get a tattoo until on my 30th birthday, I said, fuck it, I'm doing it. And I chose to get one. And since then, I've filled out the arm. This was my first tattoo, which is a little pulpo, this one here, octopus in Spanish. I often talk about it in Spanish. But anyways, we totally went on a tangent, forgive me. But one of the things that can happen when you are conditioned in such a way that does not recognize boundaries is that you mask part of yourself to try to seem more professional. On day 4, which is going to be the final day, September 5th of this series, we're going to be talking about being blackety black in whitewashed spaces. So I would really suggest that you come to that one. I have some interesting ideas that I would like to share. Not all mine, a lot of research that I found and case studies of what it can look like to show up in your full coloredness in a space that is teaching you that you have to be black or white. Another thing that can happen, and this is something that a potential client spoke to me on a client call yesterday. So I do have people who are using the link. Thank you. We had a conversation about working together. And one of the things that she mentioned was she's often been told that she's too blunt, too difficult. So one of the things that can happen as well as Black women who have been taught to ignore our boundaries is that we may try to avoid conflict because we don't want to be seen as too much, too angry, too difficult. But in truth, when boundaries might feel like we're rebelling against something, truly it's more a liberation. And oftentimes it's a liberation that's beneficial for everyone involved. Okay? Give me 1 second. I just need to attend to my sniffles. Okie dokie. Let us go to how we can practically apply our boundaries. How are we doing for time? We're good for time. Just a quick reset in case you are just joining at this moment. My name is Chereese La-Vonne. I'm a public speaking and confidence coach for change makers. That is people who want to show up in the world as the change that they want to see. I help you embody that change from the inside out and also to communicate to the people around you in a way that has influence and impact. Today, we're talking about boundaries at work, how to be a team player without losing your well-being. This specific series, Well at Work, this is day 2, is for Black and Caribbean women who want to thrive at work without sacrificing themselves. And remember, tomorrow I'm going to be announcing a new program as I have, especially for Black and Caribbean women in corporate America, called Sweet Speech, which is communication and confidence skills to get you to the sweet speech, to the C-suite and beyond using the power of your speech. Okay, so let's get practical when it comes to boundaries. We're going to walk through 3 main areas where boundaries matter most. We're going to talk about collaborative communication in the workplace. We're going to talk about navigating conflict in the workplace. And we're going to talk about building relationships. Okay, so I'm going to give you scenarios for each of these, and you can actually see how this plays out. Let's start first with collaborative communication. So let's say you're on a team project and a colleague, you know, sometimes being bilingual really make me sound like an idiot. Because I look at colleague and I read colleague. Anyways, brain, we're in English right now. So I want you to imagine that you're on a team project and a colleague drops a last minute task on you at Friday, 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. Can you just put this together real quick for Monday, they ask you? Your first instinct is, this is really important for the project. I know it matters. You're feeling guilty. You want to be seen as helpful. You don't want to disappoint. But in your gut, you feel resentful. I remember yesterday when we were talking about emotions, what does resentment mean? Resentment means that there's some things that still needs to be resolved. You're feeling resentful because your weekend is about to be swallowed up by this work. Here's what a boundary response can look like. Instead of just snapping at them or silently accepting or just ignoring it, you can take a breath and you can say, I want to support this project. With the time that we have, here's what I can realistically deliver today. And here's what you would need to wait for until Tuesday. Notice you didn't say no, you just reframed the request with clarity and collaboration. You positioned yourself as a team player who protects both the project and your well being. Now, I want to say something about timing, especially for those of us who work in the creative industries. When I just started out working after leaving architecture school, I was working a lot as a freelance graphic designer. And one of the things I realized that a lot of my colleagues did, I got the word right this time, that my colleagues did that I refused to do was that they would give a deadline that was just absolutely unrealistic. Or they would give a deadline that felt realistic but didn't factor in the unexpected. Me, I never did that. If I thought it was going to take me 2 days, I would tell you 4. Because I want having a situation where by how I showed up. And in giving you those 4 days, I had room to probably get a mental block, maybe have to go take a walk, maybe have time to be with my partner, just time to be with myself and to actually do a good quality of work. So in this boundary response, I'm going to read it again. Someone comes to you at 4:30 on Friday. They said, "Hey, can you just can you do a little thing? Can you put this together real quick before Monday?" And you say, "All right, here's what I can do right now. So I can give you X right now. And on Tuesday, I can give you Y." You have not said no, but you have reframed it in a way that honors your time and honors what you're actually able to do. You've positioned yourself as a team player, you've protected the project as much as you can, but you've also protected your well being. Let's look at another scenario. This scenario is going to be a scenario around conflict navigation. Now, I want you to imagine that you are in a cross cultural team meeting and someone dismisses your idea with, "Oh, we tried that before, it won't work." You feel like, "Oh, them not listen to me." You feel the heat start rising on your chest. Anger is coming up because you know that your idea has merit, but you also don't want to be labeled as defensive. Here's how you can respond with a clear boundary. Ground yourself, and I want you to respond concisely. "I hear your concern. Here's what's different about my approach. Let's test it on a small scale before we decide." You have, with your words and with your energy, because you grounded, offered a soft rebuttal to what could have been a very awkward or even explosive conflict. Instead of just shrinking back with someone who seems to be dismissing your idea, you stood up in your idea. Instead of attacking that person to say, "You are wrong, why you don't want to listen to me," you stood in your knowing and you said, "I hear you. Here's what makes mine different. Let's try it on a small scale, and then we can make a decision." You're not over explaining, you're not apologizing, you're just clear, you're confident, and you're also collaborative. Now, I want to take a pause here because I know sometimes standing up in that clarity and that confidence can be a little bit challenging. And I mentioned this yesterday. It may be because of the ways that, because of either your upbringing or ancestral stuff, we sort of have this interesting relationship with what we call perceived authority. This is why I gave you the foundational belief at the beginning of the session: nobody no more than me, right? No one is above me. And that's something that you will need to believe in order to be able to adopt a stance like this. It's not about being rude, it's not about putting anyone below you either. But it's understanding that just as much as someone has a right to assert their perspective, you too have a right to assert yours. Okay? Let's look at another scenario. This scenario is specifically around relationship building. So maybe a little bit outside of the workplace, but it's about, you know, building camaraderie with the team. So you're at the team's happy hour. Everybody's bonding, but the conversations honestly feel very superficial to you. And you find yourself forcing a laugh, you smile, stress out, and you're in this sort of performative mode. Later, when you get home, you feel drained, you feel invisible, obviously, because you've been playing this performance all night long. Here is what about a good boundary response could be. You could share something small but real in these contexts. So, everybody loves to say, "Hey man, how's it going?" "Oh man, can't complain. It's going real good." Right? That's literally two of my ex coworkers. Literally. And I see them with a cowboy hat. "Oh, Chereese. Bad, bad." But that's really how they sound. "Hey man, how's it going? Can't complain." Listen, I need to tell you something. I actually did a video on YouTube last week about watch this if you hate small talk. I do have a interesting relationship with small talk. It's not about small talk as much as it is about authenticity. And I do not enjoy operating as a robot. So these kind of programmed responses, "Hey, if you good?" "Yeah, I'm good," which has nothing to do with the fact of if you're actually good or not. I'm not really into that. I don't like it. I don't like being a robot. I'm a human, right? So when we have these sort of robotic things, and you're at this, as I said, in this scenario, you're at this happy hour, and everybody just I can't. What you can do, because of how you want to show up, right? One, you could leave, of course, but you do want to kind of build connections. But you can share something small but real. People don't have to know your business. But for your own sake of alignment, remember, we can't be successful if we're leaving part of ourselves behind. So for your sake and your alignment, what you can say is something like, when someone says, "Hey man, how you doing?" You can say, "This week has been a little bit heavy for me, but I'm still proud that I showed up and I was able to finish strongly with one of our clients," right? Like, real. Them not have to respond, but you're not here for the status quo. Your simple existence and your way of doing it differently can shift things. Not always, but it can if people are open to that shift. So, what this tiny truth does is it offers an opportunity for connection. People can lean in if they respect authenticity over performance. Um, they can, they don't have to. But over time, this can also build genuine rapport. And what you're doing is you're basically doing a pattern interrupt. And sometimes people don't know what to do with that. It's like, them kind of spaz out because, again, it's not written into the robotic code. But you get to show up in a way that builds genuine rapport without losing yourself. And that's what I love for you. I was talking to a client yesterday who was talking about the way that corporate America can feel like a game. And you have to kind of have to know how to play the game. And just like I said yesterday, one of the things that we want to do in how we show up in these spaces is we're wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. So you know how to make use of the circumstance in a way that is supportive of your mission and also the mission of the organization that you're in. But you want to, and I believe that you should do it in a soulful, soul led way, not in a soulless, vain, and vapid way. Okay. So we don't want to lose our soul in what we're doing. We want to make sure that we are moving from a place of alignment. Now, we may have much more depth than a specific situation or circumstance requires, right? Not every circumstance needs all of your depth. What you then need to do is you have to know how to translate with wit and wisdom the depths and truth of who you are in such a way that is relevant to the circumstance, which also can push the needle to shift the culture on things. Claire? All right, my last point. Let's take this a little bit deeper. So yesterday when we were talking about emotional regulation and how emotions are signals, not enemies, that's important here because boundaries often start based on the emotions. I want you to I want you to practice or remember some of the stuff we talked about. We talked about resentment, meaning that there's something that's unresolved, anger, meaning that there's a boundary that's been crossed, frustration, meaning that there's something I'm not expressing or something doesn't feel expressed, anxiety, meaning that I'm feeling like I'm saying yes to too much future responsibility and I kind of need to come back to the present. And when you learn to decode these emotions, you can act before burnout sets in. If you want to hear more detail, go look for my video, which is Emotional Regulation at Work for Black and Caribbean Women. It's on my LinkedIn and it's also on my YouTube. Quick reminder for all of you, I am Chereese La-Vonne. I am your confidence and communication coach. Today we're talking boundaries at work. If you're ready to take this further, September I have 6 spots available. bit.ly/30 minutes with Chereese is how you're going to be able to book a call with me to talk about that. And tomorrow I'm going to be announcing a special offer that I have for Black and Caribbean women in corporate America who want to build their communication and confidence skills to help them get to the C-suite and beyond. Let's recap today. Recap. I have not been talking crap, have I? Let's recap today. Boundaries, they're not walls, they're bridges that protect your well-being by allowing people to come in through particular channels, right? So you get to still be collaborative even as you're putting boundaries. We're not just trying to say no. We're trying to say, how about this way? That's what boundaries are about. They're especially important for us as Black and Caribbean women because of the history and the cultural expectations that we tend to carry. With collaborative communication, with navigating conflict, with relationship building authentically, you can be a team player without losing yourself. And in fact, all of what we covered today is a part of the module in my new offer called Sweet Speech, which has to do with connection, where you're able to build genuine rapport with the people in your workplace so that you can have more effective work relationships. I want to remind you that I have a few spots left for September. The link is below. You know how to get to me. If today gave you at least one boundary that you're ready to practice, I would love for you to just drop the word boundary in the chat. And if you want to tell me more about it, I am all ears. But until next time, that is it for our session today. See you tomorrow on my LinkedIn and on my YouTube for this Well at Work series for Black and Caribbean women in corporate spaces. How to advance in your career without leaving yourself behind. That is tomorrow. Authenticity at Work. Hasta luego. Bye.